The Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Lord.
You may be seated. Well, it is good to see everyone here this morning. As Pastor Rachel was saying, it is, of course, All Saints Sunday. Following on the heels of Reformation Sunday and our new member party and trunk or treat and all those fun things that we did, All Saints is a time when we pause to remember those who have passed before us, to remember them and to celebrate them. My parents were in town this week. Some of you got to see them last Sunday. And on Friday, we gathered around my dad's laptop for everyone's top idea of a good time on Friday night. We watched some very, very old home videos. On these somewhat shaky, grainy videos that were taken about 37 years ago, we got to see my grandparents, Pa and Meemaw, as they were called, standing in front of their house in this dusty old West Texas town. You can tell that they are a little unsure about this newfangled contraption that's being pointed at them, a video recorder, and being asked to say things to it, but they were good sports. We also got a glimpse into the past and saw me and my older brother, ages 3 and 7, respectively, hamming it up, showing off our muscles, right? Make a muscle. Wrestling with my dad and dancing to music. In this case, for those who are up on their 80s music, it was Huey Lewis and the News, The Power of Love, and When I Think of You by Janet Jackson. It was a strange experience to see little 3-year-old me spinning wildly with arms flailing to the music and realizing that's still kind of how I dance. But it was also very meaningful to see my grandparents, now long deceased, smiling into the camera and relaying a message of love to us. I remember how sweet my grandma was, how she would rub our backs at night while putting us to bed. I'm told that I once informed her that I thought she was a very, very precious grandma. I was too young to remember my grandfather's death, but I remember well the grief I felt when my grandma died. Blessed are those who grieve, for they shall be comforted. So Jesus says in one of the most famous parts of one of the most famous sermons, the Sermon on the Mount. Tucked into a litany of other beatitudes or blessings, it can be easy to pass by that statement without too much reflection. But reading it on All Saints Sunday has special resonance. It makes me wonder, have you ever felt blessed to grieve? I'm guessing there are more than a few of us here who have grieved deeply and haven't felt particularly blessed in those times. Sometimes grief is downright painful. It's because grief takes us to the outer limits of human emotion, the liminal spaces of the human experience. Grief and loss have a way of decentering us, unmooring us, making us question the previously unquestionable. For many people, the first stage of grieving the death of a loved one feels like they're wading through a deep bog of sorrow. And yet, as we move through the experience of grieving the saints in our lives, we eventually begin to put the pieces of our lives back together again. It takes time, but eventually the grieving heart remembers what its true purpose is: to love and to receive love in return, both in our human relationships and in our relationship with God. Renewing relational connections, even when maybe we don't feel like it, can be a powerful antidote to grief. As we all prayed together with our psalm this morning, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. This poor soul cried and was heard by the Lord and was saved from every trouble. This psalm, this prayer, is an affirmation that even in grief, God's presence is with us and God's blessing is within us. Even in grief, we move eventually to the expressions of love that we cherished with our departed loved ones. Maybe home videos, grainy or otherwise, help with that. Maybe pictures or mementos or visiting special places can help. Reminders of loved ones serve as an anchor in the midst of grief. After we have wandered on the outskirts of sorrow, eventually we come back to the center, where we find God's love and blessing, and perhaps begin to believe Jesus' promise that those who grieve are blessed and will be comforted. A friend told me recently that she thinks about deceased loved ones like distant stars in the universe that send their light to us across the expanse, even though those same stars ceased to exist long ago. It takes time for their light to travel to us. Though they lived in the past and are here on earth with us no more, memories of our loved ones continue to come to us across the expanse of time, reaching us right now in our present moments and warming our hearts, perhaps illuminating us with a sense of love and peace. In a similar way, I think our awareness of God's actions in the past can shape our experience of grief in the present. Even in the midst of grief, we have recollections of God's love in the past and assurances of God's love in the future. It's in light of that awareness that we read our passage from 1 John this morning. It's not death that has the last word, but rather love. God's love and the experience of it has left John, the letter writer, almost speechless. Grief at the departure of the saints in our lives can sometimes be tempered by wonder at God's love. John exclaims, as though you can almost see him sitting in this warm hot tub of God's revelation. He says, "Behold, what sort of love the Father has given to us." Behold, or look, or see, or even comprehend, he encourages us, what kind of love the Father has given us. Wonderment is one of those great insulators against the bracing cold of despair at the departure of the saints in our lives. The wonderment that has John exclaiming, "Behold!" This parental metaphor is familiar to us. He calls us children of God, and that is what we are. The idea of us being God's beloved children reminds us that no matter our age, we always relate to God as to a parent. We, the children in need, God, the one who cares for us, as did all the saints that preceded us. But John doesn't stop there. He takes us further, beyond the familiar metaphors of God as parent, leaning in to the mystery of God's love and our future with God. He writes this: "Now we are beloved children of God, but it has not yet been made known what we will be. We know that if God is made manifest, we shall become like God, because we will see God just as God is." John captures something of the mystery of what lies on the other side of death, something that the saints in our lives, those who have departed, are presently experiencing, but which we can only imagine. Only God knows what deep kinds of relationality the departed saints are experiencing, and someday we will experience. But we are assured that we will be enveloped by a vision of God's love one day too. People of God, on this All Saints Sunday, I know we all come with different experiences of loss of the saints in our lives. Some of us have never really had to say goodbye, maybe never even been to a funeral. Others of us have been to far too many. But what unites us is our hope in God's promises and our experience of God's grace. And my prayer for us is that we will stand in the light cast by the saints who have preceded us in death, that we will take strength and courage from the memory of their lives. I pray that in all things we will feel the deep love of God, who promises to be with us through it all. Amen.